In today's episode, we talk to Jessica from Bloomays. We talk about the importance of learning and how to stay on top of things. Stay tuned. Welcome to HR Visionaries, where we unlock the secrets of modern HR. I'm Benjamin, your host. Join us as we shed light on today's HR universe with HR leaders and innovators from across the globe. Whether you're an HR pro, a business leader, or just curious about the future of work, this is your shortcut to the forefront of HR innovation. Brought to you by Hire, the AI talent attraction platform. Welcome to the latest episode of HR Visionaries. I'm very much looking forward to my guest today. Jessica, it's great to have you on.
Thank you, Benjamin. I'm happy to be here.
Jessica, can you tell us a bit about yourself? Who are you?
So who am I? I am 42. I am the mother of a toddler who's turning 2 next month, and he's in his terrible 2 phase, so I'm really struggling. And I'm a partner now at Bloomays, which is a boutique consultancy firm specialized in tech profiles and people profiles as well.
Have you been in the tech industry all your life?
Yeah, more or less, you could say that. I started my career in Accenture in 2007 in France as a recruiter, actually. And at the time, we were supposed to hire 400 people per year. That was the hiring plan for a 5,000 people company. That was a lot. Unfortunately, as much as I loved working for Accenture, the big financial crisis hit in 2008, and those companies were severely hit as well, especially in terms of recruiting. So everything was frozen. However, because I had moved to Paris at that time, I was living in Paris, where fortunately there was a lot of jobs still available. So I moved to Orange, and then I moved to my first startup, which is now acquired by Cisco. And then I never left the startup industry. So from 2010, the biggest company I worked for was 800 people.
What do you like about the tech industry?
Let me tell you that I was not prepared at all to work in that industry. When I took my job at Accenture, all my friends who went through the engineering careers, they made fun of me because I was so outside that world. I did majors in literature and languages. I am very much an intuitive person, not someone who was necessarily cut out for that world. But definitely at Accenture, what I discovered was the passion that the tech teams have for what they do, regardless of the fact that even if those companies like Accenture are known for, doing consulting and being outside of their clients' topics, maybe, but really, in reality, when I was working with them, talking to senior managers and all that, I could see how they were really dedicated to their clients, dedicated to what they did, to what they were creating, sorry. And also the fact that people could really evolve in those roles. So it was a career, a passion that I learned to really appreciate with them. And then working in smaller companies after and really building the people function from the ground up in those tech companies, I was able to do so much compared to my colleagues from my universities, my studies, who went through bigger corporate firms. The good thing in the tech industry, I would say, is really the freedom and the ownership that we get as HR people and the impact that we can create. Definitely, I think it's really unparalleled with other sectors.
Well, the pace of change is obviously very, very different in the tech industry compared to so many other industries. So that qualifications that were in incredibly high demand, let's say 2 years ago,
So, for example, mobile app developers. I think it's fair to say that, well, in 2022, 2021, those people were in very, very high demand. And then, well, perhaps it's fair to say that last year and this year, the demand slowed down actually quite significantly. And then other skills and other profiles were suddenly like much more important.
Right.
How do you think companies can balance this well?
No, it's a tough question. I think we definitely have a duty of investing in learning and in development and growing skills of our employees. And I think the best performing companies do that, definitely. They don't just try to hire like an ad hoc type of profile and then just try, when they pivot, they just hire new people. I think what those best companies, in my mind anyway, what they do is really invest in growing their people's skills. And actually, the last job I had, I was lucky enough to have some headcounts dedicated to that. And I think that's definitely something that HR needs to always have in their teams. Like you cannot have a functioning HR team if you don't have someone that's dedicated to growth.
Well, and I think it's very interesting what you say that, learning and development, in particular in countries such as Germany or France, where laying off people and hiring different profiles is, well, it's actually not that easy, right? So you need to get the right people on board where you can also envisage some kind of development going forward. Should these particular coding skills, for example, no longer be very relevant?
Right. Plus, I'm not sure about Germany, but in France, we, as employers, we do have regulations about investing in training. So it's not just like allowing a training budget, it's actually proving that you took action around growing your people skills.
Okay.
So that could, yeah. So that can be coaching. It can be internal. It doesn't have to be necessarily external. But I know that in some other countries and in the tech industry in France, we have been influenced by Anglo-Saxon countries, giving just a learning budget, let's say, like a learning stipend that you can spend on books, for example, or anything that you like regarding learning. And actually in France, that's not enough because companies have this duty to prove to the state actually that we spend money on, that we spend and that we invest on learning. And depending on your size, it can be it can be a big investment to do. It's a percentage of your staff costs.
Okay, can you tell us a bit more about that? So for everyone who's not familiar with the French requirement of training, that it sounds very interesting.
Wow. Basically, the training landscape in France is mad. I cannot say really otherwise, but it's changed drastically in 2014 actually, and it became this. It used to be just a mandate about spending in learning. So if you could prove that you were spending something, that was enough. Now it's changed, so it's been 10 years now. So it's about really taking actions. So most of the time it's still about spending for sure, but you need to have to track what you spend. You need to track the benefits of everything that you put in place. So yeah, very early on, even when there's only 50 people in your company, you already have this kind of commitment to do. And I have to say, in the tech sector, we actually do more than what the law says. But even just standing by the basic legal requirements, it's already quite a good benefit, because again, it's not about just throwing money at the issue, but it's about really showing that you are investing towards development. And again, that can be internal. So whenever you take time for coaching your employees, like if managers like take time to share knowledge every quarter or something. In my company, for example, we have tech retros where our CTOs give some sort of talks about new developments in tech and all that, and that allows our recruiters to be very well versed in all the tech topics, and that allows them to be better recruiters. That's definitely training.
Well, if every company is required to invest in learning and development, that then of course raises the bar for every company as well, right? So for all the companies who want to be outstanding, the bar is then even higher.
Yes, but in reality, the companies can also choose what they want to invest in. So it's true that the fact that companies can still allow a lot of money to like training their C-levels, for example. But it's true that this new law, like since 2014, actually broadened the obligation, and you need to prove that you have this development plan in place. But it doesn't have to be a lot of money, but it's really about action. So mentoring, having buddies in a company, all of that. But usually the issue with the French companies, especially smaller businesses where I used to work a lot, is that we do a lot of things, but we don't know how to formalize it, and we cannot really prove, if we ever controlled by the state, we cannot really prove that we do things. But that's why I'm encouraging all of the founders to bring on board like an HR professional as soon as they can.
It's I think in particular in the tech world where things change rapidly, it's so important to be well ahead of the curve, and also in terms of hiring. How do you make sure that you approach those people now that are needed in a few months' time, in particular in a situation where stuff is changing so quickly, so that even between now and in half a year, so many things could have changed?
You mean in terms of skill set?
In terms of skill set, in terms of environment, in terms of in terms of also salary expectations. So perhaps the salary expectation that you communicate now could be very different in 6 months' time.
To be honest, because I've worked in talent acquisition almost for all my career, what I learned really, because those moments of high demand, high growth, or highly specialized skill set, I think the root of the matter is really about structuring your talent acquisition process. Mm-hmm. And now that I work for clients, like providing that service, I can tell you that there's so much work to do regarding the structuration of the talent acquisition process. And it's not about tooling, it's really about what do we want to achieve? How much time are we dedicating to launching a kickoff, making sure that all the parties are aligned around a scorecard? Just having a scorecard, just to say that, it's something that is still unknown to some people, even in my own company. And to be absolutely humble about this, even if we do provide that service for our clients, when we were hiring for ourselves, we did make that mistake maybe 3 or 4 times. And at some point I raised my hand because I was not really involved in those recruitment, but because one of my partners was like, okay, we are terrible at recruiting for ourselves, what's going on? And I showed them, I was like, but the truth is, we don't apply the same recipes that we are selling to our clients, we don't apply them to ourselves. So how about taking some time to really write down what we want, to really write down scorecards, write down each step of the process, what is their why are we doing each step, like, because it's important for candidates as well, to know where they are going, to understand what we are selling. Recruitment, we always say that in talent acquisition space, it's not a hard science. There's this human factor that is really hard to grasp, but we need, as employers, for sure, to be much better at this structuration aspects, writing down, making sure that we can share things, because it's not about sharing a job description. That everybody can do that, but even that we can also talk about that, because there's work to do on that, like how to write a job description that is attractive but also reflects the reality, but also having a scorecard ready to make sure that all the stakeholders of the talent acquisition process know what to assess and know what we are looking for. And maybe it sounds very basic, but I can assure you that it's not done correctly most of the time.
Jessica, I have so many questions, but perhaps you can start with the following.
I saw you writing down the questions.
Indeed. Yeah, well, unfortunately, well, I don't remember stuff that well these days. Well, getting the right structure in place, in particular in times when, well, many things are going on, you want to hire a large amount of people. How do you discipline yourself to get the structure right? Because, well, obviously there are the two extremes. So you either start immediately completely unstructured and just go for action, and then other people then, well, think too much, implement a structure for 2 years, and then the company has failed in the middle already. So you need to find the right balance of action and structuring.
Fortunately, there's a ton of resources about that. There's the WHO method that's very well known. I mean, I think it's well known. Like, we only talk about that for the last 15 years or something. But there are some proven recipes that we can steal from other companies, where that could be applied to ourselves. Again, it's not rocket science. It's about aligning people, and I don't think you need 2 years to find like the right process. You can also trial and test what works for you, but most of the time, and again, I can take the example of my own company, where we definitely made the same mistake that we can see with all of our clients. And I'm going to give a very simple example that maybe also as a candidate or as an owner, the fact that we are so not aligned and so unsure of what we are looking for that we add too many interviews in the process, right? How does it feel for the candidate? Of course, they know that they are not the preferred choice. They know that we have some doubts. It gives them doubt as well, and it doesn't help us select the right candidate either, because we might just make a choice by default because we've been interviewing that person for 8 or 9 interviews, and we did reference checks, and still we are not convinced. So there's a rule that we say, when there's a doubt, there's no doubt. I don't know if you say that in German as well, but in French we do say it, and that can be that can help you in some ways, but it can be too radical to say when there's a doubt, there's no doubt, like you shouldn't hire that person. Maybe the problem is with you and like how much time did you really dedicate to structuring what you're looking for? And I can give you another example for my own recruitment in my previous company. Someone was holding the position before me for a few months, and then she resigned. She didn't like the company in the end. It was a wake-up call for the founders, and they were like, okay, we did a mistake. We made a mistake because she was not happy. We're not happy either. So let's really sit down. And you know what they did? They wrote 4 pages of scorecard for what they were looking for in a chief people officer. But it might be shocking, but to be honest with me, because also it was the middle of COVID, it was August 2020. I was interviewing left, right, and center. I was the founder contacted me, and to be honest, I gave him the link to my Calendly because I was so busy. I didn't even pay attention. I didn't set a meeting with him. I was like, yeah, you can pick a time in my calendar. And when we talked for an hour, and then he sent me that document with 4 pages. It was not a job description. It was really a scorecard, what they were looking for in terms of hard skills, posture, how the governance of the company worked, etc. I was sold. I wanted that job, but I can understand how it could be not relevant for someone else, but for me it worked. And so that's really my point about taking that necessary time to structure things and to be very, very transparent, at the risk of maybe closing some doors with people, but at least you would open the doors with the right people.
Well, description of 4 pages, that's actually quite impressive.
I think they were really scared of making another mistake.
Yeah.
And again, another anecdote, when I got the job and I told my network, so many people DM'd me to say, oh, wow, I met them. I didn't like what they shared. Like I didn't feel aligned with that. And I was like, yeah, good, because I did. And so I got the job, and it was, and I was very happy in that job for 2 years, because what they were describing was the reality. And that's a very, very big challenge also when you hire is, for example, you were saying, how do we hire when we are in this changing context? Well, be honest about that. Be honest to the candidate what they are going to find when they join you. In a previous job 10 years ago, my former manager told me, if you join, it's going to be tough with, we have unions in that company. You never work with unions, because it was right. Like, I always worked in the tech sector where everything was quite mellow, and that company had a factory. And then, there was the classic French social context, let's say. And I was like, okay, so it's going to be tough. I'm up for the challenge. And she was right. They were tough with me, but it taught me things, and I was ready for that. But at least I didn't discover. Usually when things go wrong after a recruitment, it's because people, whether it's the employee or the employer, but it's usually because they realize that some of the parts of the job were not really out in the open, and that's really a big deal. And you should always be transparent, at the risk of being radical, and again, maybe scaring some people off, but I think it's probably the best policy.
Well, true, you don't want people who believe in fairy tales. However, well, I think, particularly in the startup world, I sometimes feel that some companies terribly oversell what they're doing. So let's say they're like super duper AI company. However, in the end, you just check and they have like 2 data scientists and 50 salespeople. So like, okay, is that really tech? Or you have other companies that are perhaps the opposite, then tend to undersell. So how do you assess whether you over or undersell?
Again, I'm a fan of the radical transparency. So you shouldn't do either of them, for sure. I think you should be realistic, and that's usually the problem, is that people overselling are probably too enthusiastic in a way,
Yeah,
and they want to sell something that is going to happen, right?
Indeed, but so let's say, well, in particular for great people, you're in a bit of competition, and all the competitors oversell who they are, what the opportunities are, and if you're the only one who is like transparent and very realistic, aren't you then facing the threat of, well, being out recruited by all these oversellers all the time?
That's interesting. I think we should not underestimate the candidates' intelligence and their capacity to search for clues. Nowadays with companies like Glassdoor, with LinkedIn, with your own network, what's going on anyway. In France, we had this Instagram account, and actually it became a trend of really, it was a bit like Me Too for startups.
Mm-hmm.
And it's called Balance ta Startup. And some companies are terrified actually to appear on that Instagram. And we discovered that it's the owner, she's actually a lawyer in employment law, I think. And yeah, she gets testimonies every day from employees, really telling the reality of life at those companies, where they have this great employer brand, they have this great consumer brand as well, and it's just terrible. And I think today, like, it's impossible to lie. So you should never oversell, because it's very easy to know what's going on. Another example, like, we just closed a recruitment for one of our clients, and the candidate is actually a former employee of mine. So of course I wanted her to get the job, but I also wanted her to make sure that she knew everything about the company. It's a very small company. It's a new job. And the good thing is, when she got the offer, the owners invited her to meet the team over drinks literally yesterday. And she appreciated that, because she was like, okay, I only met the founders. Of course, they sold me the role, they sold me the company, but I don't really know the atmosphere at this company. So by meeting the rest of the team, it would be great. And I used to do that in tech teams, actually. We used to make an offer to someone, and while they were deciding, we were inviting them to half a day with our teams to really see the tools, the environment, the people style, because it was, the interview side was over. They had an offer anyway, so it was really about showing our true colors, and I think it works with the right people. It works.
I must say I strongly agree with you. I think it makes perfect sense. I think some, in particular, startups that are very innovative are nevertheless quite scared of underselling and then competitors overselling, and in particular, since everything is so time critical, that you probably can, when those people have signed and worked for, let's say, 6-7 months for that other company, and then are very disappointed because they were oversold, you don't necessarily have the time to then hire those people that were then come back and are like, well, you were transparent. I think it now makes sense to work for me. So therefore the timing issue, I think, is also quite critical.
Absolutely. And really, in terms of recruitment, I know we all want to be very quick. I think a good recruitment takes time, and it's fine. And I'm not talking about, again, adding different interviews. I'm really talking about taking some time for the candidate to think about the interview and getting their feedback every time, at every step, to make sure that they are really engaged. Because sometimes you kind of err because you're too enthusiastic, and that can be true for employees and for employers. And I think it's good also to take some time. I remember my former head of talent acquisition, she actually gave me the feedback that I was too quick with her. Like, literally after 2 interviews, I made the offer, but I was sure, I was confident. That's also my style, because I trust my intuition, and I shouldn't, actually, to be honest, I shouldn't do that. But with her, like, I was convinced, because I knew her from my network and all that. But she needed more time than me to think about the offer, And I think you should also listen to the candidates and listen to what they want. And usually in interviews, there's not enough time for that. Like, what does the candidate want, and make sure that it aligns with what we are offering.
Jessica, I have my last question for you, which is, what are your favorite interview questions that provide you with most insight on a talent?
Okay, so I have one for managers, or when I interview like people in leadership positions. Well, 1 or 2 is, what's the toughest thing you've done in this management role? And because that gives me a sense of who they are and how they react under difficult situations. And also, who do you trust? That's important. And that's also a question I ask as a candidate. So usually my interviewer is the founder of the company. So who do you trust? How do you give your trust? That's very relevant to me. And recently, the question I ask all the time is really, what do you need on a daily basis? What drives you as an employee? And I ask that because we are very flexible at Bloomays. We we have small offices, but we actually allow people to work from home, and some of us work from home. One of my partners is in Mexico. There's one in Barcelona, one in Paris. I'm in Lyon. So we are in Google Meet every day, Slack, etc. It's very, it's a different way of working. So I want to make sure that it aligns with what they want. And you were saying, in startups, candidates tend to believe in fairy tales and they want to sign up because it sounds exciting to work in a smaller business. And I know, because I've worked in this industry for a long time, that it can be very tough and it can be very disappointing for people coming from bigger companies to fit in this kind of environment. And in our company, definitely, and we saw it because we had some people resigning over that, the whole remote aspect, it's either great for you or it's terrible for you. So you have to know. And so when I ask people, what do you need? If they tell me, and which is interesting, is that they don't try to sell anything when you ask that question. It's like, yeah, I need to work with nice people. I need to talk to them every day, etc. Yeah, maybe in this position you won't in our company because it's more like a remote position and you'll be kind of on your own and you'll be more dealing with clients than dealing with us, you know. And whenever I hear, oh, I liked the interviews here because I liked the people, I don't think that's enough. I'm tough that way. I'm sorry, but I'm like, no, you need to have other sources of motivation. You know, you don't just pick a job because the people are nice.
Indeed.
I don't know if I answered your question.
That sounds a bit more like a hobby then, yeah. But
Yes.
I like the question a lot. So what was the toughest challenge you have been working on? Because it's it's probably something people don't like prepare too extensively before the conversation. So therefore, it's actually a very cool question indeed.
Yeah, especially for managers, because I mean, again, it doesn't mean that when they join us, they are going to handle, you know, difficulties every day. But being a manager can be tough, and you need to know a lot about yourself when you're a manager. And so, knowing how you react in difficult situations, what your resources are, so that shows who you are as a person, you know. And especially in tech roles, when tech guys become managers, a lot of people are not trained enough in becoming a manager. They don't get the tools and the resources. And so they kind of learn on the job and they don't necessarily have the right answers to that question.
Indeed. Jessica, thank you so much for your time. It was very insightful. Really liked the conversation. And it was great talking to you.
Thank you so much for the conversation as well. And happy to have maybe another episode with you.
Indeed.
We have so much to cover.
Indeed. And well, thanks to you all for listening in, and see you next time.